Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks very much for having me to Google headquarters. I'm very glad to be here. Here's my plan for the next 45 minutes or so. I'd like to talk to you about the book, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have at the end of this. But it occurs to me that if I'm talking about magic as I see it, and you're sitting there thinking of laser beams and smoke machines and tight leather pants and top hats and rabbits and Job from Arrested Development, we're never going to understand each other. So I'd like to start by just telling you a little bit of my story, and at some point in the middle of that, it will sort of pivot, and we'll go from there. So I became a magician by accident when I was a 9-year-old. I read the Lord of the Rings books. Have you seen the movies or read the books, some of you? Yeah. So there's this scene at the beginning of the first Lord of the Rings book where the wizard Gandalf is at a birthday party, and he uses magic to shoot these magical fireworks into the sky, and it turns into this dragon and swoops down and terrifies everybody. And I wanted to be able to do that, because I thought that if I could do that on the playground, I would be unstoppable, and I very much wanted to be unstoppable. So I went, 9's sort of an unusual age, because you're old enough to get through 1,300 pages of pretty obscure fantasy literature, and young enough at the end of that time to still hold out hope that maybe there's such a thing as real magic in the world. So I finished the Lord of the Rings books, and I went to the adult section of the library looking for a book of spells that I could do on the playground. This was my moment. I was gonna crush it like that. What I learned instead was that that's not how magic works. But I found a book of sleight of hand, and I learned my first really great piece of magic. And it's very simple. You put a coin in your hand. When you close your hand and open it, the coin disappears. The thing about magic tricks is that when they are bad, they are worse than just about anything, because it just looks like a trick. But when you take a magic trick and push it far enough towards excellence, there's this tipping point where it no longer looks like a trick, where it looks like an actual supernatural event. And I became obsessed with this coin trick. I bet I put in, I don't know, 400 hours of standing in front of the bathroom mirror. I'm sort of a weird little kid. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, practicing this over and over. For some kids it's video games, for other kids it's football. For me it was mastering, as a 9-year-old, this coin vanish. And my mom, because I'd stand in front of the mirror and practice, and I'd drop the coin over and over and over, she went out and got a carpet sample and put it on the floor so it wouldn't make so much noise. But after months of this, there was a point where it didn't look like a trick anymore. Where I closed my hand and opened it, and the coin, it just disappeared. And I decided that I wanted to see how people would respond to that if I did it at school. The thing that I couldn't really have known then, that I've learned since, is that when you watch a magician, when you buy a ticket to see my show, or you see a magician on TV, you understand that you are seeing an illusion. Magic is fiction, right? And it's just part of the form that the audience knows that they are being deceived. That's why everyone shows up, right? To see something that they can't explain. When you don't have that context, magic isn't entertaining, it's just terrifying. Like, if I were to just stand here in front of you right now and disappear, the appropriate response to that would not be to clap. It would be like, get up and run as quickly as you can from this room. So the kids watching on the playground didn't know that they were seeing a magic trick. They didn't know that I was a magician, because I wasn't a magician. I was just a kid who had mastered this trick. So they saw the coin disappear, and they didn't clap, they didn't laugh, they didn't applaud. They just started shrieking and running away. So imagine for a second that you're the teacher on duty at the schoolyard, and you look across the playground and you see this group of children screaming and running, and I'm standing in the middle. So this teacher stormed across the playground, and I was terrified of this woman. And she towered above me and demanded that I show her whatever it was that I showed the kids to make them run away. And so I took the coin out and put it in my hand and did my little dance of the fingers. And when I opened it, it was like she was a little kid. Like I had never seen any adult anywhere respond to anything the way this grown, educated, terrifying woman was reacting to this coin vanish. And like, I suppose that's a fun story, but for me it was very troubling because I knew it was just a trick. I knew that I was just a little kid who had learned a coin trick, and I could not explain the disparity between the very simple means and the staggeringly unexpected result that came from something as simple as a coin trick. So I didn't become a magician because I wanted to be a performer. I didn't become a magician because I wanted to be in entertainment or get on stage. It's like I discovered at a really young age that you can say something with a magic trick that's hard to say any other way. And I just wanted to chase that as far as I could. I think, you know, it's one thing as a 9-year-old to say that you're going to become the greatest magician in the history of the world. It's another thing to say that as a 19-year-old. And you know, I went to college on an acting scholarship because I wanted to study stagecraft because I thought it would lead me to become a better performer. But what I learned instead was that the best way to learn magic is to just do it for people, to do it for anyone you can find in all different walks of life. And the discovery that I made is that it doesn't matter who you are. You can be young, old, rich, poor. You can be a sheep herder in Tibet or a taxi driver in Texas. It doesn't matter. Everyone, everywhere in the world responds to a good piece of magic in exactly the same way. It's like this universal experience. The question that I've been chasing as a magician for as long as I can remember is very simple. I've noticed that as I get older, it becomes harder for me to be genuinely amazed by anything. To be clear, it's easy to be entertained. It's easy to be inspired. It's also easy to be deceived or fooled, right? All of the experiences that are in orbit around wonder are relatively common. But for me, that white light through the clouds astonishment does get harder and harder to find as I get older. I think one of the reasons I love magic so much is it's a way for me to chase that. But even as a young magician, I feel like in every profession, you probably get to see a corner of the human experience that's harder to see from another profession. Doctors probably see things in waiting rooms that you don't see anywhere else. I don't know what architects learn about being a human being, but I'm sure there's something there. But for magicians, especially as a young magician, it becomes impossible to ignore the loss that happens in the transition from being a child to being a grown-up, because you see it in all of, as a kid I remember doing magic for my parents and the friends of my parents, and it became clear that there's this incredible weight that settles on people when you're an adult, and with a magic trick you can make that go away for a second, and I love that. I think the obvious answer to why is it harder to become amazed by anything as you get older than it is when you're a kid is that when you're an adult, you just know more, right? You have more information. But that answer falls apart for me for a few reasons. I think the magician operates from the fundamental conviction that learning more about anything makes that thing more amazing rather than less amazing. It's the absolute renunciation of the axiom that familiarity breeds contempt. I was, just before I got married, I was reading this book about, I was fascinated by lightning. I just wanted to understand what it was. And so I was reading this meteorological book, and then my wife and I happened to be on our honeymoon in the middle of the Canadian wilderness. We went on this wilderness canoe trip, and we got pinned down on an island 7 days from the middle of nowhere with this lightning storm that came in, and it was one of the most terrifying moments of my life, because lightning was slamming over and over and over onto the trees in our island. You could hear trees falling, and I was worried that a tree was going to fall on our tent, and it was terrifying. but it was also, if I'm honest, one of the most just riveting, wonderful, wide awake moments of my life. And I reckon it was like in one scene, in one experience, the reality of lightning. I understood that understanding the nature of lightning, understanding that it's a static discharge from the clouds that explodes to the ground in this cataclysmic blast. Like, knowing the facts about lightning does nothing to remove the astonishment of being in the middle of a thunderstorm. So I love magic for a number of reasons, but one of them is that it's a way to connect with the unknown and to sort of make peace with the fact that I don't have all the answers, I will never have all the answers, and to share that experience with an audience. A few years ago, I decided that I wanted to write a book about all of this, right? About wonder, about disillusionment, about losing sight of astonishment and all of the things that I love about magic and finding it again. And when I finished writing the book, I was worried that it's easy to get up and talk about wonder. It's easy to write a book about wonder when you're sitting in a Starbucks paying $5 for a cup of coffee. But I wanted to see if it would still hold up if I went to the toughest, most aggressive, most hostile place I could find. So I asked a warden of a maximum security prison if I could come in to do magic for the inmates. And it was one of the most incredible events of my entire career. I'd like to show you the video, but here's what I want you to see. Before the magic happens, they wanted nothing to do with it. They wanted nothing to do with it. They're standing like this, they're sort of tough and antagonistic. And then you will see there is a moment where something happens that they can't explain, and it's just like a switch flips. And you will see these, like some of these guys are in prison for life, and you will see them sort of, I don't know, become little kids again. So if I can get this video to work, I'd like to show you. If you use a deck of cards, I'm going to give it to you to hold for a moment, right? We're going to need here, will you name a card?
8 of diamonds.
Okay, 8 of diamonds. Will you name a number?
13.
13. So we have 8 of diamonds, 13. And you were holding the cards. I want you to see this. I'm going to give you the deck. Before we start, I want to just point out a couple of things. You could have named any card. Like, you agree there's no way I could have made you think of 8 of diamonds, is that right? You don't want to change your mind, 8 of diamonds. Same with the number, like that was your choice. You said, what was it?
13.
13, right? Okay. And you've been holding the cards. With that hand, I want you to just deal the cards, just drop them on the ground. Let's see, you said 13, so deal 12 cards from the top and just drop them on the ground. Go. Count them out loud, too.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Here
11,
we go.
12.
Okay, stop. Yeah, drop that one on the ground. Can we all agree the next card is a 13th card, right?
Yep.
Right.
So you could have picked any card, but you said 8 of diamonds. You could have picked any number, but you said 13. If you had said a different number, we'd go farther down in the deck or stop higher. But you said 13, 8 of diamonds. Turn over the 13th card.
Get the
That's
hell
great.
Right? I don't know how. Yeah.
You see that wherever you're standing. I'm going to hold it so the camera can get it for a second. And I want you to see like it's permanent. So here's the idea. Watch this. Oh. Look at your hand here.
It's crazy.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You gotta show me how to do that. I'll kill
Throw it back.
No, it's permanent. It's gonna stay there.
Throw it back.
Try to take it off and give it back to him.
Speechless. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
You can see the thread, right? You can see it on camera too. But listen, more than anything, I want you to hear this. I'll give that to you for a minute. Thank you. Listen. I want you to hear it. You hear it break? Yeah. I'll do it again. So here's the idea. I'm going to take some of the broken pieces. And I don't want you to think I'm adding anything or switching anything. These are the pieces I'm going to use. So I'm going to roll them up into a ball. You can see all the broken ends get pulled together, right? So this is the amazing part. If you take the ball of broken pieces and squeeze, the idea is to get it to just stick. And then look at this. Will you help me? Just grab the bottom piece. Do this slowly so the ball doesn't fall off to start to pull.
Okay.
So when I finished college, I started touring as a professional magician, and for me, that looked like essentially living out of a suitcase and bouncing around the country doing a show as often as I could, 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week. When you're an established magician, you can tour in a circuit, sort of like a band. So you can play Denver one night and Fort Collins the next night, and maybe Colorado Springs, and sort of work your way across. Maybe go to Lincoln and then Des Moines, and tour across the country. But when you're just starting out, you have to go wherever the work is. And so I Tuesday in Florida, Wednesday in California, Thursday in Ohio. I just crisscrossing the country, and I did that for 5 years. And I discovered that maybe like most jobs, the profession of magic, which I thought looked so amazing from the outside, concealed beneath that veneer this sort of grinding day-to-day reality where my commute would be 15 hours. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning to get to the show, and then do sound check and load in and do the show, and then go to bed and sleep for 4 hours, and then get up and do that all again the next night and the next night and the next night. And after 5 years, I just ran into the wall. I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. I was on stage in Milwaukee in front of, it was a beautiful auditorium and a great audience, and the show was going well, and in the middle of the show I just said, "I'm sorry, I'm done. I hope you had a good time, but I'm gonna go now." And I walked off in the middle of the set and went back to my hotel room and thought, maybe this ship is sinking. Maybe I'm not going to do this anymore, because I do not want to have this be what I don't want my life to look like this anymore. The universe, I think, is a sort of strange and mysterious place, and once in a while, incredible things just happen. And it just so happened that on this leg of the tour, I happened to be reading this book about traditional Indian street magic. Every culture in the world has its own version of the sort of archetypal figure of the magician, right? Just like food or art or music, the magic that comes from a culture is as much an expression of that culture as any of the other arts. So had I been reading a book about Chinese traditional magic, I would have wanted to go to China, or Japanese magic, maybe I would have wanted to go to Japan. But after I walked off in the middle of the set and went back to my hotel room, I picked up this book and started reading it. And I decided that what I wanted to do was walk away from everything in the US, to just sort of leave my touring career behind and forget everything I knew about being a magician in America, and go to the other side of the world to see all of this magic I was reading about. So I wanted to see snake charming, I wanted to see street performing, I wanted to see fire breathing. It wasn't so much that it wasn't so much that I wanted to go to India specifically. I just wanted to go to this place where all of these things I was reading about were performed. So my mission was, I want to go be amazed by something. I want to remember why I love being a magician so much by seeing a tradition of magic that's totally different from my own. And so I did. I went to India and I sought out snake charmers and street performers. I found a tribe of traditional Indian street magicians who trace their lineage and have passed their secrets down from father to son for 3,000 years. I saw amazing magic, so I sort of found what I was looking for there. But what I discovered was that the most amazing parts of the trip, the most genuinely magical moments that felt like I think magic should feel, good magic should feel, had nothing to do with tricks. It had nothing to do with performances. It was in immersing myself in a new culture, seeing things that I'd never seen before. You know, both travel and magic are similar in their ability to deliver this cataclysmic death blow to any sense of certainty you have about who you are and how you fit in with the world around you. And so I became really fascinated with this idea of finding wonder not in the extraordinary but in the ordinary, right? It's one thing to find it on the other side of the world or find it in a magic show, but how do you just find it in your day-to-day life? How do you adults are really good at making things ordinary. We're really good at getting used to things, which is probably useful, right? If we woke up every morning and freaked out at this bright burning ball of thermonuclear fury rising over the eastern horizon, that would be an untenable way to live. We should just call it the sun and get on with our day. But the danger is that you end up shrinking your world down to the size of your certainties, and you live in the story you tell yourself about the world rather than the world itself. And my favorite moments are those that sort of wake me up and shake me loose from that world that I've made for myself, and remind me that there's more that I'm not paying attention to. When I came back from India, I was worried that was a lot to ask of a magic show. For the first time, I felt like I had something I wanted to say that I didn't know how to say as a magician. So I started learning to write, and I decided I was going to write a book, and that's the book that all of you are holding, Here's Real Magic. When the book came out, I wanted to invent a piece of magic that would set the stage to sort of tell everyone what to expect from a book by a magician, and I'd like to show it to you. My book came out in January, so I've been doing a number of these author talks, and sometimes when I open the room up for questions, everybody has something they want to say, and sometimes no one has anything they want to talk about. But I would like to open the room up for questions. We can talk about magic, we can talk about the book, we can talk about wonder or the ideas in the book. We can arm wrestle, whatever you want. But if you have anything that you'd like to talk about, now's the time. Hi.
So I have unsolicited feedback and comments and then a question.
Yes, sir.
So I watched you watching that video, which I'm sure you've seen about 100 times.
Yeah.
And you are the one doing the tricks. And so you weren't smiling at the tricks, you were smiling at the reactions.
Yeah.
I can tell that that's like very, it's just awesome. And I believe you when you're telling that story.
Yeah.
Interacting with people. And I've always loved magic, but hated magicians. So I thank you for breaking.
Thank you.
No, but then like wonder like, all right, like, why is it real for you and maybe not for maybe a larger handful
of magicians specifically? I don't want to speak to. It's hard to comment on what other people's motives might be, right? So I don't want to assume anything about other magicians that might not be true. But I mean, I think you probably have the same thing in music as well, right? Some people get into music because they want to be rock stars, and they want to have everybody, scream and go crazy, and they want to be famous, right? And then you have people who get into music because they love music and they love writing songs. And I'm not saying one's better than another, but for me, being a performer is like it's something, I've made my peace with it for sure, but that's not why I got into magic. I got into it because I love the thing that I am able to chase as a magician. If I could do it better as a musician, maybe I would. Like, magic has a lot of cultural baggage to it. But I love personally, I love the experience of magic. You don't need to do tricks to do magic. I remember the first time I really remember the experience of being amazed by something was when my parents took me to see a meteor shower when I was a little kid. And we lived in a small college town in the middle of Iowa. But even in a small college town, there's enough light pollution that makes it hard to see the Milky Way. But they woke me up in the middle of the night and drove my brother and sister and I out into the cornfields where there's no light. And I remember feeling like, where has this been all my life? Like, it was one of the most amazing things still that I've ever seen. And I love that experience. And I'll follow that anywhere. And if that means, as part of the job, getting up and doing a magic show, that's fine. But I guess that's my way of answering how I feel about it, with trying not to speak for why other people like it. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay, thank you for asking. Yeah, hi.
So, you mentioned that when we see a magic show, we know it's an illusion.
Yeah.
And part of the fun is trying to see how it's done, and inevitably failing.
Yeah.
When you go to see a magic show, obviously it must be quite a different experience because you have a pretty good idea how a lot of the karma effects are done. I mean that must change the experience for you quite a lot. I mean, to one of being amazed, to one of trying to see how it's done.
Yeah.
How often do you find yourself astonished and amazed by magic shows?
So I'd like to answer that in two parts.
Sure.
I think, so the experience I'm having now, having written this book, is now that I have been through the process of writing a book myself. It took 4 years of pretty rigorous work. When I read other people's work, I feel like sometimes I can see the joints and the beams and the girders in a way that I couldn't before. And it has changed the way I read, certainly memoirs too, because now I have this sort of professional relationship with that form that necessarily changes the way I take it in. That's been true for magic for a long time. And as you say, it's hard not to watch a magic show and deconstruct it. But I would say that, like the best writers, you read some books and there are no seams. It's just like it arrived fully formed from some other world. A great magic show is that way too. And in the book I describe one piece of magic that I witnessed that I saw it in 2013, and I've thought about it without exaggeration every day since 2013, and I still can't explain it. And I love that. I love the realization that no matter how far I push this craft, there are still people who are so far ahead of me. Like, rather than being intimidated by that, I love that, because it means that I can still find that sort of spark of inspiration as well. Is that a fair answer? Yeah. Okay. Hi.
So, given everything that you've been through and going through the process of writing the book, what's next?
That's a good question. Yeah, I discovered that I really love book writing. I feel like I snuck into this incredible party, and I very much don't want to leave now. So I've got other books that I'd like to write, and in the course of writing the book, there's a lot of work as a magician that I didn't do that I'm catching up on as well. So I'm trying to have it both ways and have this career where I can go on tour twice a year and write books, and we'll see if I can stick the landing, but that's very much the goal. So thank you for asking. Hi.
Hi. What advice would you give today to that 9, 10-year-old boy or girl who's really into magic and wants to do magic?
There's this quote from Houdini that I discovered when I was a little kid. You're all familiar with Houdini? Yeah. So Houdini was like the original Gary Vaynerchuk. He said, the real secret to my success is simple. I work from 7 a.m. to midnight, and I like it. And I think one of the reasons I latched onto magic is because I really liked that monk-like existence of having one, my life was very simple. I had one job, and it was to perfect this craft to the exclusion of basically anything else. And I think whether you're interested in magic or music or poetry or basket weaving or whatever, I think there's a lot to be said for just working harder than the other people who are trying to do the same thing, because that's the one thing you can control, Like, there are other people who are more gifted performers or more charismatic communicators, but the one point where I get to choose how I react is in just working harder than everybody else. And I don't know. I think it doesn't suit everybody, but it suits me. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
I think you were talking about lightning when you brought this up, and you talked about how as you learn more about it, it increased the amount of wonder and awe.
Yeah.
And then, does that apply with magic tricks?
Certainly, yeah.
Even when you learn more about how the trick is done,
Yeah.
you're more inspired by it?
Yeah.
That seems kind of
Absolutely. I think one of the things that you discover as you, I'm going to say, explore the craft of magic. I assume this is true with music or with art or with painting or poetry or writing or whatever. But the better you get, the larger your awareness of how far you have to go. Like, the distance between good and great becomes much clearer. When I was starting out, it was harder to understand exactly what it would take to take an illusion all the way to the point of perfection. And I think the closer you get to that, the easier it is to see how almost impossible it is to become as good as some of the greats have been. Magic is interesting. I think of magic like fiction. It's easy to think that with a magic trick, it's easy to assume that once you know the answer, you can stop thinking about it, right? But I think a good piece of magic, like a good fictional character, like you don't finish Catcher in the Rye and then say, well, it was a good story, but Holden Caulfield wasn't a real kid, so who cares anymore, right? It's like a good novelist is using the craft of deception, let's be clear about that. He's making, or she's making things up that aren't true and pulling you into this imaginary world to give you something real. And in my experience, the better I get as a magician, the more I become aware of the complexities that are involved in actually doing that well. Is that a fair answer? Yeah, okay. Hi.
I've got a son who's sort of stumbled into magic, and he's really into it.
I'd watch out for that. Yeah.
Sometimes it's to the exclusion of other things,
Yeah.
like homework.
Yeah.
And he's gotten to the point where he's starting to get really good at it. you can go to parties and
Yeah.
with adults and do a card trick, and the adults are stuck with the same reaction that you're looking for.
Yeah.
It's the reaction that he's getting, and he's falling in love with it. So my question for you is, along the lines of like, how many times do people tell you your mom got the carpet out, put it on the floor for you? How many times do people discourage you, and how did you get over the hump?
All the time. I mean, basically everyone. You know, I think for the best of reasons, it seems to be the prudent thing to do to discourage someone from becoming a professional magician. You know, of course, right? Like it's not like joining the circus, it's becoming the circus. But I think sometimes you know something about yourself that you can't prove to the people in your life in any other way but by doing it. And you know, there were a number of years, especially when I was first working as a professional magician, where I think basically everyone who cared about me was terrified that I would be, you know, unemployed in 2 years, and they were probably right to be concerned. But I knew that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and it's like I didn't even care what they thought. I just knew that I could do it and then show them, and that would be enough. So, you know, I don't know that. I think that anyone who makes it in a profession like magic I think the only people that make it don't care what anyone else says. So I think if, like, you know, after shows, sometimes young magicians come up to me asking if they should make the jump to being a professional. And I never know how to answer that, because the only ones who will ever make it are the ones who are so committed to doing it that they don't care what I have to say. And I don't know what advice to give you, because it almost seems like it's such a hard way to make a living, and it's such a hard field to gain traction in, that unless that motivation, that sort of fire comes from within, it's not going to happen. So maybe discouraging him is the right thing to do. I don't know. I think you can split the difference. I think you can be realistic and supportive at the same time. And if you figure that out, you let me know. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And but good luck either way.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hi.
So you've been doing it for a really long time. Do you have any stories like the craziest reactions you've gotten, or has anyone gotten aggressive after you fooled them with a trick, or anything?
I was on stage in Danville, Virginia, and I had just done a piece of magic with someone on stage, and he felt as if I had read his mind. And he was conflicted about that. Like, you could just, there was tension in the room. It wasn't like, oh, this is amazing, we're having fun. It was like, burn this guy, you know? And he went back to his seat and just sat there festering for 90 seconds. And then he stood up on his chair, and this was a theater, so there were armrests, and he climbed up on the armrests to get my attention, and which worked, and pointed at me and said, "To hell with you, you're the devil, I'm out of here," and stormed out of the room. Highlight of my career. So I'm just putting that out there in case. But yeah, you know, I think, sort of like we were talking about at the beginning, when magic feels like a trick, and let's be clear, most magic does feel like a trick. You can take the same piece of magic and perform it 100 times, and 99 of those times it will only ever feel like a competently done piece of sleight of hand. But through some sort of mysterious combination of atmosphere and expectation and technical ability and just coincidence, sometimes the air is just right and it resonates on a totally different level, and then people go crazy. And yeah, I mean, I feel like magicians get to see a very beautiful side of people, because I think we all are sort of performing for each other all the time, right? We all choose the clothes we wear and the language, the vocabulary that we use. We're all sort of putting off an image of ourselves the way we want to be received. or perceived. And a great thing about magic, when it's really good, is it makes you forget to be cool for a second, and all of that falls away. And you just get this very open, unguarded experience of the personalities that you're with. And often that's a positive experience, but yeah, sometimes people just lose their cool. And thanks for bringing it up. Thank you very much.